Okay, we're going to call this work session for the mayor and council for February 21st, 2024 open. If you can all stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you can just remain standing for a moment of silence after hearing the tragic news today of the passing of Robert Powers, a beloved member of our community, our hearts go out to Mr. Powers' family during this difficult time. Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Hopperfield.
Here.
Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Ms. Roberts.
Here.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Here.
Ms. Smith. Mr. Smith. Here. Mayor Gulati.
Here. Okay, so what I'm going to say is, Lorene, you have the floor. Do you want to explain the difference of the sheets first?
Yep, absolutely. So our budget is a dynamic living document, and as such, it gets adjusted pretty much every day, sometimes every hour, until it's actually introduced. So the binder that was given out was all the information that was current at one specific moment in time. The history that's in there is still very accurate, but the most up-to-date information is in the small packets that you all received in your little mailboxes for this evening. So we will use the binder for just a couple of references for this evening, but the bulk of it is going to be based on the small handout that you guys got today. So there was a memo prepared that provides just a little bit of general information. The document that you have before you this evening has a very small tax increase. It's right about 1.52 cents. That is on the average home about $67.03. So not very large. The average home used to be $216,000. Now it's $381,000 after the reval. Just go ahead. At any time, just shout out.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry.
So, the $1.50, do you know what that breaks down to as a percentage?
No, the reason that I don't know that is because it would be a percentage of what? A percentage of what our increase is now, a percentage of what it was before the
It's
reval?
revalue, which makes it a little more complicated with that calculation.
And it's not $1.52, it's 1.52 cents. It's less than 2 cents,
Okay.
not a dollar.
So just being that we went through that reval and the massive change between the average value of a home, I didn't figure the percentage because everybody's going to assume it's a percentage of this or a percentage of that. And I just didn't want to mislead anyone with that. So it's $1.52.
Oh,
Cents, yes. No, I'm sorry.
1.52 cents.
So it's
I think that's what I'm so used to.
yeah, one and a
Yeah.
half cents. I'll say it
Okay,
that way.
okay.
And $67 on the average value of a home. There, you know what? I'm gonna go back to my room when we take our first break to get some tax information. There were the very first couple of pages in your binder were the tax rate history and tax rate impact. So now that we have a strong working document, I did calculate those out, so you'll be able to see what they are for 2024. So when we take our first break, I'll run and get those and bring them in. Just bear in mind that those are our estimates. So this budget, 1.5 cents, $67. The largest contributing factor to that was the proposed increase for buildings and grounds to hire 2 new employees. That adds about $140,000 fully loaded for those 2 employees to be added to the budget. If you were to decide you didn't want to go in that arena, then that would save, our increase would be a little under 1 cent. It would be a 0.98 cents. Just under 1 cent. I just wanted to be sure that that was clear.
Can I interject?
Absolutely.
So in the documents that you also have this document from Pat Mason.
So this specifically goes through what those two new employees would be doing. These two new employees would not be used for snow plowing. They already have those, so there's no technical overtime with these people. These are people that would be able to catch up with pretty much everything that DPW cannot do because they're doing water, sewer, or other projects. And just in this room alone, you can see nothing is vacuumed, nothing is wiped off. You have all the panels falling off over there. You have those panels falling off over there. That's just here. And just the building around itself, as you know, Pat says, it's kind of falling down as it goes because there's nobody who can do even maintenance, let alone someone who can take time out to paint, because if there is something that happens. So he does give specifically all of these reasons. He does apologize. It's just that on Monday nights, it's his son's scouts. So he could not be here, and he was really upset that he couldn't be here. But I did tell him that if anybody had any questions, if it was okay for them to reach out directly to him, and he said absolutely. He would have no problem having, if he had to, all the individual meetings to be able to give you his, I'm gonna say pitch, but his rationale for the two employees.
That should be the third page in
Yeah.
your setup.
Can you pass that to Brad too?
Yeah, I don't have that either.
There's two stapled sections. You have your cover letter, two stapled sections, and then that letter is
Oh, yeah, I
third.
do. My bad, my
Yeah.
bad.
So everyone
It's like
should
shoved in
have
there.
one.
Like in between.
Two stapled sections.
Got
and
it,
then a
There you
letter.
go. I'll take
My
mine.
bad, boss. Thank you, sorry.
It's okay.
So those first two sections after the memo, we're kind of going to set aside. That's going to be the meat of our budget tonight. So
The
what we will-
last two,
The first two. So right after the cover letter, there's a stapled 11-page document and then stapled 5-page document. So we're gonna move right past those in the beginning. and Just do a brief overview. The third is the letter that Mayor Galate mentioned from Pat. Next is our fund balance regeneration history. So there's a lot of misnomers about fund balance. It used to be called something else. I can't remember what it was because I've banished that.
surplus.
Surplus, yes. It used to be called surplus, but that gives taxpayers a misconception of what it actually is. The whole purpose of a fund balance is to offset your tax increases. So you don't want it to go up one year and down the next year. You're not going to give money back and then take money away the following year. So you want to keep that nice and steady. So the whole purpose of your fund balance is to utilize it so that you don't have to go up and down in your tax rate. Nice and steady. It helps all of our residents plan out what their mortgage payments will be. It doesn't screw up on their escrow for their mortgages. It just makes it nice and easy. So there's a lot of thoughts about where your fund balance should be, what your balance should be. Some people say it should be 25% of your overall budget or 30% of your levy, or there's so many different ways to analyze what it should be. One of the biggest benefits of having a nice large fund balance is, one, during COVID or any other kind of cataclysmic event like that. If we weren't able to collect taxes, we were more than okay to get by. We did not have the thought of issuing tax anticipation notes. We didn't have any conception of running out of money if our tax bills didn't go out on time or if people stopped paying their taxes. We had a nice, healthy cushion. That being said, you don't want it to be so high that you're just taking money from people and never giving it back. You want your residents to feel that they're getting a good return on their taxes. So we ended 2023 at $6.4 million. That's pretty high. So in my professional opinion, I think we should be anywhere from 5.25 to 5.75. So 5,250,000 to 5,750,000.
Lorraine, would you explain that to just make sure everybody's on the same board as far as the percentage that the towns usually shoot for, just that general
Yep,
working rate?
sometimes they'll look at anywhere, I try and go with a range of percentages, so anywhere from 25 to 35% of your budget. Our budget's around $19 million. So that would put us at maybe 5.7 if we're at, like, say 30% of that. Some other people look at what our levy is. It should be a certain percentage of your levy. The rationale for that is that you want to make sure you have enough fund balance to cover 3 months of spending should something terrible happen. We have that and then some. So I think we're maybe at about 30% now. If we could spend that down a little bit, we had the idea in 2020 that our fund balance started the year at 6.2 million. That was higher than we wanted to be. So the idea was, hey, let's take a chunk of that and put it towards a one-time capital funding. And I'm suggesting that we do that this year as well, because 6.4 is too high. It's, well, not too high, but it's high. It's much higher than we need it to be. So you don't want to spend that all down at once. And just to give you a caution, we have a relatively tight budget, meaning we're really only appropriating what we think we're going to spend, and we're anticipating in revenue about what we think we're going to collect. So we don't have any hidden pockets of money. We're not going to collect $6 million of a certain revenue, and we're only anticipating 4 million. We're not maxed out. We're still conservative, but we don't have a big regeneration kind of built into our 2024 budget as it stands right now.
But Lorraine, you mentioned for use of fund balance, using it as a one-time offset.
Mhm.
Can you explain the importance of that and why we just wouldn't recommend using it to offset a tax increase?
Sure. If you started to utilize it to completely supplement your budget without the ability to regenerate, then you're eventually going to just wear that down. You're not going to have anything. And like right now, it's $2.5 million of our revenue is coming from fund balance. If we needed 2.7 just to balance our budget, then that's $200,000 that we are not going to get back again. Bearing that down every single year, eventually you're going to run out. So if you use it just to more than supplement your budget, then you're eventually going to run that down and you're not going to have it. And I believe that was a problem that maybe happened in 2010, that the borough had run down its fund balance, and there was a concern that they weren't going to be able to meet payroll because they didn't have enough liquidity. 2008. So we're nowhere near that circumstance right now, but fund balance is difficult to generate and it's very easy to spend. So if we spend it too easily, if we spend down because we have this extra money, we're going to run out and we're not going to regenerate. So we're not regenerating as much as we had in the last, say, 3 years. The only reason that we regenerated this year is because we had $572,000 of land sales. That's a lot. Over the prior couple of years, we had maybe anywhere from 150 to 350,000 in land sales. Last year was a huge year. We had those 3 big properties that were marketed through Mr. Span. We're not going to have that again. We're going to have small, maybe 100, 200, maybe even 300,000 of property sales, but we can't bank on that. We can't rely on that to bring that back and regenerate our fund balance. So if we didn't have those sales, we would have actually gone down by $125,000 or $175,000. That's not a lot, but that'll eventually erode away. So we have to be careful and we have to be respectful of the fund balance that we do have. If you just take a second and look at the fund balance regeneration, you can see where we regenerate. The top amount is the amount of availability that we have going into the next year. The negative figure there is what we're using as a revenue in our budget. So that's going to come right off the top of that fund balance. So the problem when someone asks you, say in June, how much fund balance do you have? It would be less than $4 million. And that doesn't look good. It's because we haven't regenerated anything. Nothing posts until the very end of the year. So when people ask about your fund balance in the middle of the year, it's always a little not misguided, but it's a misconception of what your balance truly is. So in 2023, we used 2.4 million. We had prior year appropriations. So when there's budget appropriations left over from a year, say 2022, we had a certain amount. We had $1.3 million of appropriations in our current fund that we didn't spend. That sits in reserve for a year. So if any unexpected expenses come up or appropriations come up, that's where we spend that money from 2022. That just sits there for all of 2023. And at the end of 2023, that gets closed into fund balance. So in 2023, we ended 22 at 1.3 million in unspent budgets, appropriations from 22. We ended up canceling at 879. So we didn't spend that much of it. We spent a little less than half of that. That's great because that helped us regenerate fund balance. So it's almost $880,000. Our our big ticket item was that we took in taxes. We have an amazing collector. She brought in $958,000 more than what we expected to in our tax revenue. A lot of that comes because we have a very healthy RUT, or reserve for uncollected taxes. That's $1.7 million that we charge our taxpayers over and above what we actually need to balance our budget to make sure that we have 100%. The problem that that New Jersey has, in my mind at least, is that we have to pay the county 100% of their tax levy, and we have to pay a school 100% of their tax levy. So that means everybody that doesn't pay their taxes comes out of our share, and everybody knows our share is the smallest share of the entire tax collection. So we bear the brunt of all of that. Because of that, we have to raise over and above what we actually need to make sure that we get our 100% as well. But we brought in $900,000 more than what we anticipated in local tax revenue. So Patty had a wonderful year. We also had some other revenues. Valerie brought in more in alcohol licenses, and Danielle brought in more in construction, and everybody, every department worked a little extra, and we brought in more than we anticipated. Go Danielle. We had some unanticipated revenue out of that 724,500, and some of that was the land sales. So we can't get too excited over that because that was one big lump item. But all of those things working together have a result of operations in which we regenerated almost, well, $340,000 more than what we had the year before. So we had a good year. All came down to land sales though at the end of the day. So moving into 2024, we're starting with 6.4 million. This budget before you, the draft, we're taking 2.5 million out of that. You could comfortably take another 400 to 450,000 out of that to fund some additional capital. We'll get into capital in just a couple of minutes, but just so you have an idea of where the fund balance comes from and where it's going. So I know everybody's not just going to look at this and absorb it all. So take your time, go over it, stay up late tonight, study it. If you have questions, I'll be here tomorrow.
That, like, whatever time of night, right?
Right,
About
11:37, text me about fund
We can all
balance.
tell how much Lorraine loves her numbers, her job.
So the next item in our budget handout tonight is our capital plan. 24 capital budget detail. This is where you all have some guidance to give for this evening.
It's similar.
Does everybody have this one?
It's similar.
Yeah, it's just one single sheet.
One
Go
single
underneath,
sheet,
yeah.
and send it somewhere else.
It's underneath that one.
There we go.
It should be
Thank you.
right underneath your fund
underneath that
balance.
one.
On it, this one. Got it.
All like big and long, and then the sticky ones for each other.
Thank you so much. So y'all are gonna have a lot of input on this tonight. Our interim administrator, Greg, went through and narrowed down a lot of the requests. This was our biggest year for capital requests since I have been here. There were $4.8 million in capital requests. So Greg just went out there and took care of business and
Good job,
took
Greg.
out. He had the whip in there. Marie had to hold him back a couple of times, but he took out $3 million already. So you can see the items that that he eliminated and negotiated. Some of the items, the extrication, oh, I didn't write extrication equipment. Marie had the idea to fund that over 3 years. That was a really tough word for me.
That included the ladder truck at 2.5 million, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big chunk. I mean,
Yeah, that was a really rough battle. Wade and Greg went at it for a good, 45 minutes to say, no, not doing it. So
Greg
there's,
just said, no, historically, they got a ladder truck and they needed,
I didn't know that.
so they built a place.
if
So
you build it.
you
then,
gotta watch what you approve on other things too. They didn't have the building big enough for the ladder truck.
I agree.
Classic move. So,
We could have used that the other day.
So there were some things eliminated already. I'm sure if you would like to revisit any of them, we'd be happy to go over them. But right now we're at a request of 1.7 to make our budget work. We need to get that down to 1.5. So you either have to reprioritize maybe about $200,000 to $225,000 worth of capital, or we can cut 200 and some $1,000s out of the operating budget. But that 1.5 million goal is made up of the appropriation that we have in the budget draft of 531,000. Plus it's our debt payment that we're paying down on our note of 525,000, which is coming up next. And the difference in that is the amount that we could take extra from fund balance. So if anyone would be on board with taking a little bit more out of fund balance, that will help fund our capital. If not, we have a lot more to cut.
So I'm sorry, were you gonna go through the capital details, or do you? want me to
Yep,
do
do you
that?
want to go through that now and then we'll come back to the regular budget?
Yeah, so for the police budget, the ALCO test is exactly pretty much what it says that it is. The evidence software program is a program that will allow the lieutenants that are doing the OPA requests and the detail for officers. All officers have cameras. So when all the cameras come to the building, they wirelessly, all the information goes inside the building. So with all the information in there, if someone asks for an OPA request or someone asks to see the video, this lieutenant has to go through every single video and redact whatever has to be redacted out of the video. Not to mention, that all has to then be put together. And this software that they're asking for speeds up that entire process. So where it would take 4 to 8 hours, it would almost be in half now, because you're taking lieutenant who's now just sitting at a desk stuck having to do this. This is software that will help them improve what they're doing and get them out of where they are. The holding cell doors that we do have are aged. Our holding cell doors have issues to where they are not meeting the requirements of today. They do have to be replaced. The building upgrades are for the buildings that are in the, the building upgrades are for the OEM building. There is a certain amount of money that they have gotten through forfeiture sales. I believe that they've been doing their other work in there with. This would be them being able to complete the work for the PD in the OEM. The chief has offered to do field trips with anybody that wants a field trip. If you go through the current police station, there is not a women's locker room. There is not a shower that's in there that the women can use. They would actually move that to the other building so that they had a secured area. There's other things that they would be using in that OEM building. Where they currently do all of their interviews is where their lunchroom and their break room and the same refrigerator that they have in that room, which sometimes can hold not necessarily evidence, but hold things that are cold that might be necessary, is also where their food is. They don't have another storage. So that would actually be another thing that they were looking to do. The 2 vehicles that they're looking for, they have 2 vehicles that are reaching just about the end of the life for a police car. As you know, police cars sit and they run all day long. So whether they're sitting outside the police station waiting for the changeover, whether they're sitting outside and they're outside a call, the engines are running, they're very, very rarely not running, and that's for the ease of safety for the officers. They do have the vehicle, the electric vehicle. It's unfortunately just not a practical vehicle for them. It's not used a lot. It can't be used a lot. The suggestion was to move that into the rotation of municipal vehicles along with the other 2 vehicles that they would be replacing. And then the ones that we would be replacing municipally would go out to auction. Pat would put them out to auction in June. So the 2 vehicles that they're asking for to replace the 2 that are near their lives. The fire, the low band radio equipment that.
Sorry, can we ask questions now or wait?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The building upgrades, I thought PD had separate funding that was gonna be covering that.
No, right now what they have is money from their like forfeitures and seizures, and that's worked up to where they are right now. You can't anticipate, you can say it's gonna come in, but you really can't anticipate over and above that. So they really need, they don't have their drawings done yet. There are certain things that they would need to be committed to. This isn't all that's gonna actually do the upgrades over there. It's just this gets them their drawing, it gets them further along in the process of renovating that so that the police can utilize that building.
So would that then be, when that money comes in, if that money comes in, would that be an unanticipated revenue that you?
The money that comes in is the DEA forfeiture, and that
Correct.
can only be used for certain things. So last year was a very good year. There was a receipt of a lot of funding. And my understanding is that funding will pay for almost all of the renovations, but this 70 would be the municipal contribution towards it.
You're supposed to use that for that reason on that? I thought it was overtime and other
They,
stuff is boiled down to wages.
they can use it for appropriations that aren't normally anticipated. So they couldn't use it for the cars because we normally fund 2 cars every year, but they can use it for an expense that is not normally anticipated in the budget.
Just want everybody to understand that we pay an officer out of the budget. That officer works basically for DEA. DEA and what they do, the money comes back if everybody's up to speed on that. That money comes back in and then they use it. So it's a double income for the police department. I just want everybody to be aware of that. That's all.
They do reimburse overtime. It's not very timely, but they do reimburse for our officers overtime while he's providing agency service. But the regular flat salaries and wages is all on our taxpayers. They don't reimburse for that portion. Or the benefits or taxes or pension.
Is that an answer, Rachel, for you?
Yeah, I'm used to hearing the DEA grant funding. You were calling it something different that I wasn't hearing, so. that's why I
Forfeiture,
asked.
yeah.
Yes, thank you.
There are 2 things that go into the forfeiture trust. We're gonna have to, I have to get a whole entire new bank account now, because now the prosecutor is in one of the other 5 boroughs of New York, and that particular prosecutor requires that we have a separate physical bank account. So I'll have to have a separate physical bank account. But in the forfeiture trust right now is our regular forfeiture items, anything that they would auction off that the police themselves had. It's also DEA and county forfeiture as well.
Thank you.
Are we doing a lot of video as far as going out? We are, okay.
I'll give you the look, not
Yeah.
to say anything.
Yeah, I just realized that. I just thought we was recording locally. That's fine.
You were good.
Well,
You were good.
that's something I'd like to not have gone into.
It was fine.
Just-
I think it's fine. So fire, we have the low band radio equipment for the vehicles. The low band equipment is so that they can communicate amongst themselves within the vehicles. The safety equipment and the FM1 radios, this is the drive to be able to have all of the entities on the same frequency, the police, the fire, ambulance, CERT eventually one day, because nobody is doing the low bands per se. We do need them for the vehicles to be able to speak, but this equipment is just an investment. The safety equipment for the FM1 radios is just an investment into the beginning of the system. The hose replacement is basically exactly that's what it is. It's hose replacement. The unfortunate thing is that they are at the end of the hose that they had previously, and you just get to a point where you can't replace certain sections anymore with different patching and pieces. The building improvements for 3 and number 4, you can see in there, one is for the HVAC unit, that's at number 3, I'm sorry, at number 4, because that is actually not working at all. The second unit at number 4 is not working at all, that is the 12. And the HVAC unit, I believe that was at number 3. The extrication equipment, we came up with the idea, they're $15,000 a piece for all of those pieces of equipment. Those usually run out of firehouse number 4. There's a specific vehicle that comes out when that is in need of being used. But we, again, came up with this idea of dividing it into the 3 sections, it's 3 different pieces, which is the 45,000. And this is the gear. The gear is $250,000. As you're aware, firefighters now, volunteers or paid paid firemen, their gear that they have has to be fitted to them. It's not just stuff that they pull off the wall, it's their helmets, their gears, their face masks, their oxygen, everything is fitted to that specific fireman. And that is what new code dictates. So this $250,000 allows us to have just under, I think we said was 30 something sets of equipment, but it'll be the entire 43 sets with a grant that's applied. The ladder truck, we saw that, we took that out. The fire truck reserve is $200,000. That fire truck reserve is money that's put aside every year in anticipation of purchasing a fire truck. All of these things, you do have the option to alter them in some way. So just as an example, the fire truck reserve, if you felt that you wanted to fill this void that we have the capital of $400,000, if you decided that you wanted to do just $100,000 for fire truck reserve, you can make that decision. If you wanted to choose to do one vehicle for police, you can choose to do that also. That would make up, another $78,000. So all of these that we go through, as you hear them, they're not definites, they're just, you have the ability to alter them if you choose to, or fund them all, depending on what your pleasure is. The OEM CERT radio upgrades, again, that is doing part of what is in the fire budget of having everybody on basically the same type of frequencies. OEM, as you know, is Office on Emergency Management, which is very important when we have a situation. Public Works, we have the streets, the roll-off truck. I'm actually going to pass this around. Pat Mason gave this to me. This is a roll-off truck that is a request based on the fact that we do collect cardboard and metal at our recycling center. I was not familiar with this. There is a company now that will actually pay for our cardboard. So if residents were to take their cardboard to the recycling center, we have the ability to get paid for that. Pat has only just started doing that. I believe he said it was May of this last year. And it's just a few $1,000s that he's gotten from it, but it's a few $1,000s from cardboard that people were discarding at the recycling center. He also gets paid for white metals like dishwashers and dryers and washing machines and things like that. So the roll-off truck, I'll pass it around, has all these different numbers, what it would actually cost, what we spend in carting fees to have the dumpsters removed and dumped and brought back. We have to dump them because more people come to the recycling center and we have to have the recycling center open. So the truck life is in here, average days. When there is a driver in here, it's not an extra driver, it's a driver included. But it's very animated, so I just want to thank Pat for all of the detail. It's actually kind of a comic book, but it's actually really good. So that's the roll-off truck that's in the beginning. We did talk about doing a deposit for that. I'm sorry, a percentage to do for a possible deposit if we choose to make the decision in the middle of the year. We can make that decision, which I think is what Greg had recommended also, so that we're not funding the entire thing. The fuel system compliance upgrades, those are obvious fuel compliance upgrades at the, I believe that those were at the pumps. Yeah, he was saying at the pumps. The wall repair at DPW, that is an OSHA issue, so that has to be done. The pickup truck, there's a pickup truck. I don't know if you're all familiar with, oh, I can't say that. One of our employees, who has had the truck, he's probably had the truck, I think Pat said, for almost 20 plus years. It has a lot of mileage, it has a lot of life on it. That's the truck that he's looking to replace. The vehicle lift is a vehicle lift that they would use inside where they have their repair type of mechanic shop that they have for DPW over there, because we do have mechanics on site that will do maintenance and will do regular work on our vehicles that we don't have to send them out. The loader is basically exactly that. It's the loader. The paving, we had originally put in $750,000. We took $150 out of that and put the $600 in. You can choose to put the 150 back if you choose to. The guide rail is very obvious, that's the guardrail. The building and grounds for Noriticon Field fencing,
I'm
sorry.
sorry, before we keep going, so the OSHA, the wall repair, that's an OSHA requirement, so that's something we technically shouldn't recommend cutting, because we need to do that.
You need to,
correct?
yeah,
Okay,
needs
so is
to
there
be
anything
there.
else that we've covered already that we have to do, so we know that we can't strike it?
The vehicle lift.
The vehicle.
is,
Okay, I just wanna make a note, so when
And
I.
fuel system compliance upgrades.
Okay,
So the vehicle lift has already existed, we're
Right.
just
Yes.
upgrading it.
It's not an upgrade, it's a replacement.
It's a replacement.
The last inspection, they said that it wouldn't pass again. So. And they use that for, it's not the portable lifts that they just got, it's the in-place lift, and they do all the police cars and things like that on it.
Because we do, if you're not familiar, we do all of our own in-house repairs if possible. We do all of our maintenance, we do the oil changes, we do all of those things, whether it's the police cars, whether it's the vehicles that the construction official uses or the zoning officer uses, all of those are maintained through our DPW. Anything else on Public Works? Buildings and grounds, Noriticon fencing, that is the fencing that has to be replaced. That has been, I believe, on the list since 2015 or 2017. I don't remember, but that is if you do go up to Noriticon Field, you will see that that is a huge necessity to be able to keep that from going where it's supposed to go by the houses. We're gonna have some issues with that if we don't take care of that soon. The bleachers are bleachers that need to be replaced. The bleachers that we have are too high. The bleachers that are of today, you're not allowed to have them so high because of ADA compliance and whatnot. So these are replacement bleachers that will, as the years go on, they will replace them in all of the different places, on all the different fields. The nutrition picnic tables, these are nutrition picnic tables that would go under the pavilion. I know that some of you that have been at the pavilion, you've seen the picnic tables. It is not to replace those picnic tables as much as we want to replace those picnic tables. These are picnic tables so that people that have wheelchairs and people that don't have the ability to get up to the tables, they can actually wheel themselves under because the tables are lower. So there's a little bit of a section for regular seating, but then it actually steps down. So people that have the ability or need to do that, they can utilize that. The recreation shed, bocce and exercise equipment. This is not for the existing bocce court. This, I believe, is for them to be able to do a new bocce court. I don't remember him saying exactly what was with the other ones, but I believe it's something that's become extremely popular and they have many people that are utilizing it. So that's where that came in. The exercise equipment is the exercise equipment that the senior center is using. They used to have someone come in, an exercise instructor that used to do like chair Zumba and things like that. They actually have an exercise instructor, actually one of our residents who volunteers her own personal time to come in and do this. So that exercise equipment is to replace the equipment that they do have there, that this volunteer has come in and has continued to do this program with the seniors.
Is the 1,500 for the bocce and exercise equipment, or is it has to do with the recreation shed?
It's the shed, the bocce and the exercise equipment together. It's
Three
one
things.
line item for three things. Anything else? Okay, so the water utility, water meters, that is a standard that has been in the last, I believe, 2 budgets, Pat said. And what that is they purchase water meters. As you know, you have a one-time chance of something happening at your grinder pump, and then after that the borough will fix it, but it's on you. However, when you sell your homes and things like that, what they do is they will come in, they will put a new grinder pump in where someone has had issues with that grinder pump so that it's new right from the beginning. These are also available for residents to purchase from us so that they have them.
You're talking about grinder pumps or
Grinder
water
pumps.
meters? Water meters.
Oh, I'm sorry, I went to grinder pumps for water meters. I'm sorry. Water meters are
You're gonna
obvious.
replace
Water
them.
meters are obvious. I'm sorry.
I didn't think that we were replaced grinder pumps after 2019. but we don't replace them when people leave.
No, no, no.
You were
If-
talking about the water meters.
Yes,
Got it.
yes.
Just wanna make sure.
Sorry, I'm just moving everything into one
Got it.
line
I
item today.
understood.
Okay, so water utility is the water meters. Those are obvious. We have been replacing all of the water meters as the time goes on, and eventually we'll get to where we'll get to the end and we'll have to replace them all over again. The Muffin Monster replacements, the original request was the $300,000. Pat said that one of them,
What is a muffin
What is a
monster?
muffin
I'm
minder?
sorry, I could
It's
not.
essentially an industrial large grinder.
Okay,
Alright, so everything flows to a central area and this is what grinds it up and moves it along.
muffin monster.
I'll tell you something. I know a lot about poop in this town. I did not know what a muffin monster
If
was.
you ever have a chance to see one in action, please do so.
No, thanks.
Yes.
I'm good.
No.
Suit up first.
Yeah, I'll
I'll
pass.
pass.
Right,
MSA.
like, listen, that.
if you tour the MSA, they're in the MSA. And it's interesting because at the MSA, you would think that it really does smell and it really doesn't smell. And at the end of the tour, they're actually drinking the clean water that comes out of the MSA, but that's another conversation.
You wanna go?
Another conversation.
Sorry, Danielle, your reaction is today.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the Muffin Monsters are again, something that we do have to replace. We do have them centralized throughout the town for the sewer system, and they have to be replaced as time goes on. The grinder pumps are, I went over those twice. The lateral inspection camera, this is a purchase that they need to replace the one they have. The one that they have, I believe he said it's their original one from 2003. So he said they have definitely been able to get their use out of those. It's, I believe, the same company. And the lateral jet cart is exactly what that says it is.
And if I could just make one comment, just so everyone is clear, both here and for the public. And any of the utility stuff, that budget right now is in balance. So when we talked about needing to make some of those cuts for the capital side, we were talking about stuff in the general fund, not in those utilities. So making a cut there wouldn't help us.
Because those are already funded through the utility. The utility has the money to pay for those. Okay. How'd I do, Lorraine?
Wonderful. An excellent recap. I have nothing to add. You were definitely paying attention during all those conversations. Writing feverishly.
Yes.
So
What's next?
before we get into the meat, we'll look at the last 2 pages. And that is just a little study of our debt. So our current fund does not have a long-term debt. There's no bond, and it should be the last 2 pages of your packet. There's a legal link sheet that says schedule of band payments. So when the borough, each year after the budget is passed, there's bond ordinances. And a capital ordinance is a fully funded ordinance where we don't have to authorize any debt. The bond ordinance authorizes debt. Normally that happens either too close to the time when we issue our note or after the time when we issue our note. Our note's due in July. So the current year is normally not issued as debt. One, because the timing just doesn't work out and we just have one note. We're not going to have 2 because you have to have an offering statement for each. So it's too expensive to have 2 notes at this time. But that being said, those capital projects normally don't get to a point where we have to start funding them right away. So normally we wait until the following year to issue that debt. If it looks like the projects have stalled and they're not going to advance, we still don't have to issue that debt. So if you see along the left-hand side, that lists all the ordinances that are included in our current note. So our current note for the current fund is that's 3.2 million on the far right. That's what we issued in 2023. So the only debt we have for our current fund is $3,218,000. That's a note. It's issued for less than 365 days. It has to be paid off incrementally. Each one of those ordinance has a separate clock running along with it. So the way that notes work in the great state of New Jersey is that you have to figure out the useful life for a project, and then you have to have it paid off within that time. but you only have 10 years. So even if the project is gonna have a 20-year life, you still have to have that note paid off within 10 years of the original issue. So our 2014 capital improvement for ordinance 4-14, that was originally issued for, or authorized for $456,000 of debt. We only have at this point in our 2023 note, $69,000 of that left. That has to be paid off in 2024, and part of our payment this year, part of our $525,000 payment will pay off that 2014 note. So each year we'll be paying them down. There's on the back of the page, it has the actual repayment schedule, like when each of those notes will have the payment in which year. So all of them have to be paid off by the column that says pay off by, they have to be paid off by that year. So I try and get them paid off the year before, as long as there's sufficient funding. But there's also something called a minimum payment. So the minimum payment is an actual formula that depends on the number of useful years and the original issue date. So once that's calculated, that's the minimum amount that we have to start paying at the third renewal. That's probably a little bit more information that you need, but just so you know where the figures actually come from. So that $3.2 million is the only debt that we have for our current fund, which is pretty amazing for a $19 million budget, that we only have $3 million of debt. That one column that says ABNI, it's the third column from the right, that stands for authorized but not issued. So we had $1.6 million of debt that was authorized by bond ordinances but had not yet been issued. 639,000 of that was issued in our 2023 note. So whatever is authorized this year, the magic number, we're paying down $525,000. We want to authorize either that same amount or less than that. That means that we'll have a net pay down of our debt. So if we only authorize $500,000 of debt this year, that means we're going to pay off $5,000, which is not a lot, but it's still in the right direction. Even if you go right to that maximum of $525,000 authorizing in debt, then we have a net wash. We didn't generate any additional debt. Still really good position to be in. So that's our goal when we were talking about capital, that we don't want to, or the goal is to not authorize more debt than what we're paying off. That very last page shows you what our note history has been. So we started in 2015 with a $3 million note. It rose to 4.5 million in 2018, and then it started to come back down. So this year, not knowing what's going to be authorized because capital has not yet been decided, even if you authorize another $525,000 in debt, then we're gonna break even. We're still gonna be at the 3.2 million. So the goal would be to be less, but even if we stay even, we're still in good shape because we're not generating any additional debt. So I hope that makes sense. And I know everyone's not going to pick up on all the detail in this schedule of notes, but it's good reading. Again, 11:30 at night. Give me a call, it'll be really exciting. So if we
Can I
want
just
to,
interject?
yep, go right ahead.
So the page where it has the amortization that goes down like this. If you look in this, not where it says ordinance title, if you look right next to it, it says ordinance number, and like the top one says 414. So if you were to go onto our site and you were to go into our ordinances and you were to put in, you know, for 2014, it'll show you what that project is. The same thing with all of the other ones. You know, 9 of 2019, number 20 of 2014. It'll show you those types of things. So if you were curious what the projects were on top of what the dollars were, that'll give you even more information about what we're talking about to possibly understand it, if that helps.
So when it says various and then just the year, there are multiple ordinances from that year.
It's just one ordinance, but there's a lot of different.
Yeah,
projects.
everything is
It could
in the
be-
ordinance.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
It could be police cars and DPW equipment and maybe some paving. It could be a lot of different things, so much so that it just wouldn't fit in that little.
But it would just help educate you to understand why the debt is what it is. And as Lorraine is explaining, once you have the bond, you only have to put the 10% up of what your debt is that you're borrowing, but then that debt is there for 10 years. And that's why having this schedule showing the breakdown of the diminishing of the debt is very, very good for everyone to see, just to be able to understand.
Is there a penalty for paying them off early?
No, not at all,
Okay.
not at all. The
And
only
then-
penalty is that you just have less money to work with in your current fund budget.
Well, okay, and then the other question is, I see you have the general ordinance and the water ordinance, but you don't have the sewer ordinances on here, right?
Because we don't, there's no note for sewer. This is just our notes.
Got it, so those are bonds, municipal bonds,
These are bond anticipation notes.
these, the sewers are bond, municipal bonds.
It's all NJIB funding. Any other questions on debt? Okay, let me know tomorrow. If you guys have some exciting reading, you have questions for tomorrow. Um, To go back to our staple sections, this is the actual meat of our budget. So in the past, when we met with just the finance committee, we would go through kind of line item by line item. Is everybody interested in going through that level of detail tonight, or I can just try and highlight what the big changes were in each department?
Which packet, sorry, which packet you starting with?
The very top one.
One of
it's-
11.
Yep, yeah, 111, good job.
Highlight.
It's easy to see, you got the whole punch, right? So this first page, 1 of 11, is our revenue. So all of the revenue that we bring in is on this page. That 2.5 million is the fund balance that we spoke about. That's what we're anticipating currently. We have local revenue, which is a little smaller. We have our licenses for alcohol, our fees and permits. That's not our construction permits. They're listed a little bit further down. We have our state aid. I always love to point out that the energy receipts tax, it's 953,000. That is not a state aid. It just comes from the state. So local municipalities used to collect, just like we collect our cable franchise fee. We used to collect that same fee from the electric company. And the state said, whoa, that is too cumbersome for you to handle that. So we're going to take that over for your behalf, and then we're going to pay it back to you. But we're going to call it state aid. So we look really good. So that $953,000 used to be a local revenue. So the
Not to
state-
mention, they get to utilize our dollars
All
at the
year.
state level all year before they issue checks to the individual municipalities.
Yeah, and they start paying out what they call state aid, like in September, and then you get some in September and some in October, November, December. So they hold our money all year long. So
Mafia.
shysters, I'll tell you. But that $49,000, that is the whopping amount of state aid that we get on a $19 million budget. Thank you, state of New Jersey, for your $49,000 state aid contribution. That's your tax dollars hard at work.
Wow.
I'll get off my pulpit now.
Moving on to offsetting revenue.
We have the construction fees that Danielle is just slaving to the bone to collect over there. We had a really good year last year.
Can
The
I
state-
interject?
Yep, absolutely.
So let's just use that line. Let's just use that line of the Uniform Construction Code. If you were to go all the way across, and if you look at the numbers at the top, Lorraine prepared this so that you could see the amounts for every single year. So that you can compare one year to the next, see what was a good year, see where COVID was, and those types of things. But that's with everything. You'll be able to do that straight across with everything. I just want to let them know that.
The actual figure is what we actually brought in. The budgeted figure is what we anticipated.
Mhm.
So the state will allow you to anticipate as a revenue what you brought in the year before. Unless you know for sure you're going to bring in that exact amount. It's not really a very conservative approach to anticipate exactly that amount. So you'll see that for 2023 for construction codes, we thought we'd bring in 215. We actually brought in 240,000. The year before, 298,000, 244,000. But in 2020, we only brought in 184,000. So I kind of took the average of the last 5 years and put that in. So we did have, COVID had a couple of like a dual impact, especially for construction code. People thought, oh my gosh, it's 2020. I don't know what's going on in the world. And in 2021, it was like, hey, I've been in my home office for 16 months. Let's expand. So in 2021, we had $44,000. I mean, quite a rebound, but you can see that over the years, you don't know at the very beginning of the year what your fluctuation is going to be, or what kind of disaster is going to come your way. So if we underestimate just a little bit, that gives us a little bit of cushion, so that if we don't collect everything that we got the year before, we're not going to have a deficit, because a deficit is it's a double-edged negative. So we don't want to get too high in our anticipation, so that we don't have at least a little bit of a cushion. But we did max out as much as we were comfortable our revenues. So besides giving us a good bottom line, that also means that we're not going to regenerate as much fund balance through our revenues. We're probably not going to have another $300,000 of excess anticipated revenue, because we're anticipating a lot of it. All of those revenues there are pretty well set out, pretty well categorized. The grants that you see, they fluctuate wildly year by year. So the grants that show in our actual budget are monies that were received or that we know about from 2023 that we didn't do, or I didn't do a Chapter 159 for. So there may be 2 or 3 grants that have come in already this year that I will add into here, but they are equally offset by an appropriation. So there won't be any actual change to the the total of the budget.
Can I ask a really quick question?
Absolutely.
The interlocal, the nutrition under offsetting revenue, why is the actual, like, oh wait, it looks like last year it was 2,000 less, the year before that it was 7,000 less than what our contracted rates are. So 2,000, that's
Mhm.
5,000, 7,000.
The
And that's
county
over and over.
never pays us on time. So that 25 that we got last year,
Uh-huh.
probably a month or 2 of that was from 2022, and they didn't pay us through December of 2023. So the nutrition site normally in January makes up bills for each month and sends them all out to the county in the beginning of the year, so they could plan to pay us on time, but they never do. They may pay us, say maybe 3 months at a time. Maybe we'll get the first check in March, and it'll be for the first 2 months of the year and a month from last year. So they just don't pay on time.
Oh, it
But
looks like
unlike
there's
that-
like a lot missing though, if you look through the course of the 5 years, 6 years, or however, 8 years before this, 6 years,
Mhm.
they never hit the 27 ever,
Well, in 2018, they paid us 31,000.
right?
But,
So that would make up
Rest
for the
assured, some of
following
that,
year,
yeah, some of that
But
was
then
from
you're-
2017.
right? You're down 7, you're down 5, you're down 5, you're down 2, like they're not hitting that 27 ever.
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. Sometimes they get close. Sometimes like in 19 and 18, they were a little over, but those were catch-ups. The big amount from 18 was from 17. The overage from 19 was from 18. And then the same thing for 20. They probably didn't pay us 3 months. They probably paid that in 2021, but they're very rarely on time or exact.
It's a bill that has to get paid, so they're aware that it has to get paid, but it's also one of those that you can kind of put off a little bit, because you're gonna get it. They know you're not gonna complain about it or ask for it, because you're gonna get it. It's one of those.
I
Unlike
don't know if we're
county
gonna get it,
taxes.
because they're behind 4 years already.
Yeah, unlike
payments.
county taxes, we can't charge them interest on what they pay
Right.
late. So it's not in the interlocal agreement that allows us to do that, but we do give them bills in January, and they have the whole year's worth, so they could pay us on time should they choose to. But they don't. I'm not quite sure what they have going on there. but-
Thanks.
The money from the solar field, we did not receive this year, so that's set up in a reserve. So I have an email out to the woman that I had as a contact for that lease agreement, but if I don't get anywhere, then I'll ask Attorney Urson if he could also send a letter. Other than that, does anybody have any other questions on our revenues? It's very possible that our receipts for delinquent taxes can be increased. We have our annual financial statement done, which will give us the maximum amount that I can anticipate. So as soon as I get through that, I'll make an adjustment if we can anticipate a little bit more. Any questions on revenues? No? Everybody flips their page up right into general administration. The second packet there was the detail of the salaries. You guys can go through that at your leisure to see which department pays for which salaries. It does list names in there, so it's just easier to have that a little separate so that someone's, an employee's name isn't discussed in public. We did have, I'll just highlight the changes. We did have some changes for general administration. We have an interim administrator. Thank you very much, Greg, for being here. You're saving us. So his fee is budgeted as a vendor instead of an employee payment. So the salaries and wages are reduced and our OE is increased to accommodate for that vendor fee. We also have the search to pay for. So that's the reason for the decrease in the salary and wages and the increase in the OE expenses.
So these numbers that you get for the draft, for the 2024 draft,
Mhm.
they're based on the actuals from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years prior.
That's part of what they're based on. Yeah, besides history, there's the current impact. So if we have a process that's not going to continue, like the QPI, I have to figure out why I charge that to the right line. So now we have a QPA service. If that should change and our full-time administrator is a QPA, then we won't have that expense moving forward. So that'll be an expense in 2025 that'll be either greatly reduced or removed. So it's current circumstance as well as history.
So if you look at the tops of the pages, you can see that in 2023, just as an example, in 2023, the general admin copy releases, 2023, it was $7,000 that it was budgeted for, but the actual budget was actually $2,359.78 that was spent. So the 2024 appropriation that's being asked for is less than the original asking of 2023, but it's not anticipated to be higher than that. It's anticipated to be lower than what that number is, or exactly on the line for that number.
Right, so like, for instance, just education and training, you have $4,500 for the draft, right?
Mhm.
But in 23, it was 280, 22, it was 429, 21, it was $150. In 2020, it was
What section is that? I'm sorry.
education and
education and
training.
training.
I'm just,
Is it in
I'm
the
just
general admin part?
Yeah,
Yes.
142.
13.
Yeah,
You know,
so we had,
94. So at no point did you really ever have $4,500 that you even
it was actually
used.
spent, right? The prior administrator was to be attending QPA classes, which never happened. So that was never charged out, and they are, I think, $300 to $700 a piece. So I think there's 3 of them, so that would have been $2,100. And there was also money set aside for another employee to attend purchasing classes. And so far, no one has taken advantage of that.
So, okay, I understand. So you want to keep so keeping the $4,500 there would be a
Safe bet.
safety net for
Safe
somebody
bet.
that we would hire as an administrator who doesn't have their QPA.
Right. So they could take the QPA classes, they could take, the conferences and meetings is where the, like the league attendance or a manager's conference would come out of, but the education and training would be CEUs, it would be classes through Rutgers for certification.
Right. Like at no year did you ever spend, like in the past 4 years, was there $4,500 spent?
No, the highest was, well, $54.98 was spent in 2018.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, some of these things are more expensive than they were 5 years ago. So those are,
Well, yeah, I
these
get it.
numbers are also based on,
But that's
but
2,000%.
right. But again, some
yes.
of these numbers are based on what, what the research is of what they cost.
Right, like I was just trying to figure out why you came up or down in some of the numbers, like was it based on history, is it based on? That's my question.
Yep, it's a combination of history and in current estimation. So if you had a QPA on staff right now, that was your administrator, then we could cut that $2,000. But we don't know if the new administrator is going to have their QPA license or not. So they may have to go for those 3 classes, and probably that would probably take a year and a half to get through those classes. So if you wanted to cut $1,000 out of that, you're welcome to. Any of these things that you see, they're all for your pleasure to increase, decrease, change, keep the same.
So this budget also would be considered the operating budget and not the salaries and wages budget also. The other piece that goes with that department, these departments are the second set of staple products, 1 of 5. And again, general admission salaries, that also is part of the same budget. They're just, one's a salary and one's an operating budget of objects, things, classes, courses, just so that you're aware it's not just that's running that department. There's a whole nother category that gets added to that.
Any other questions on general administration?
What happened in 2022 under the professional association dues, where the actual number came in at $16,225.
That was the
Lorraine,
employment search.
Which one was it?
That was the employment search.
That was what it was, okay. But those things come up,
Well, yeah, but you would hope that you're not doing that every year, right?
you hope,
Right?
everything costs,
Right.
so just be aware.
But the categories that Lorraine is mentioning, the general administration, other expenses, the mayor and council expenses, the municipal clerk, the expenses, the operating expenses for municipal clerk. You have the financial administration, you have the data processing, the audit service that we pay for, tax collecting expenses, and then you have tax assessment expenses. And these are their budgets that they use, that they have to use the money. They don't have to use the money, but they have to procure all of their expenses from these budgets. So the anticipation of what they expect to be needed for the year is very important for them to make sure that they budget on track and not budget over or not budget under. Because if they budget under, it's gonna be a problem because the department might not be able to get something that it needs. However, you don't want to budget over so that there's just so much left over. So these things are, along the lines of making that department work by itself and function by itself. Just tax assessing, the fee for legal services. We have a revaluation this year. So you know that you're going to have more anticipated tax appeals than normal. So you would normally ask for, a little bit more for that because of that reason. The tax map updates, you have to do that every year. So that's a given. And that's also done through John Rushkey's office, I believe, is tax maps is who we gave that to. But you can see through a lot of these different things, what it was before, what it is now, and just keep in mind that it's everything to run that department other than the salaries.
Right. Understood.
Right, what's the Municipal Alliance cash match?
So we have a grant for Municipal Alliance. It's a drug and alcohol awareness program. And the borough is required to contribute 15% of that.
Is it-
That grant did decrease dramatically. It used to be, I want to say 13,000, now it's
17.
down to, or 17. Yeah, now it's down to
six?
under 10, yeah.
It's like 6.
Um,
I
so-
think it's 6 with the cash match. It's
Oh,
6.
Okay, yeah, so our contribution has decreased. It really should only be 1856, but I have a thing for round numbers, so. I made it 2,000.
So another quick question. These that are highlighted on the tops on page 3,
Mhm.
is that in addition to the contractual or is that with contractual?
Some of them are contractual, some of them are not. Department heads are not contractual. There's no contract for department heads. So the first one under finance is for the department head, not for a white collar employee. For tax collection, it's for the collector and the white collar employee. And for assessment, the white collar employee was already decided, and that's the department head that's still open. So those are just to highlight that there was request for additional in excess of what the normal percentage would be.
So there's not a percentage increase for
So first of
department
all,
heads?
there is, I'm told that historically it follows the white collar contract, which I
Yes.
believe is 2%.
Correct.
So there is that in place. What you're seeing here is requests for salary adjustments. I had no time to actually look at some of these requests and evaluate them, but they are included in here just for budgetary purposes. Hopefully in the next week or two, I can give some more guidance as I look into some of these requests.
So, okay, thank you.
So, we need time to go through that, I understand, so when do we actually work on this? We have time, obviously, right, when,
Yep, we have one more work session scheduled for March 6th. We are hoping to introduce by March 20th or at the March 20th regular council meeting, and the public hearing and adoption for April 17th. So there are statutory requirements that we have to be adopted by the 30th and have to introduce by March 25th or something like that.
Legal services.
We're not there
Oh,
yet.
I'm sorry, I was going through, I apologize.
You're okay.
Is everybody okay with pages 2 and 3? Okay, so on to 4, legal services. Actually, I'll just go through. So legal services, engineering services and other expenses, land use board, construction, insurance, police department, other expenses, police dispatch, office of emergency management are pages 4 and 5. And they follow the same regimen that the other pages followed.
So our bond attorney, why did that go up $13,000?
Because we have NJIB financing, and that's pretty intricate. We
I
still
thought our
have,
bond attorney was already set though by RFP, wasn't it? Is it? No? Don't we pick our bond attorney?
yeah, absolutely you do.
Is that how much?
So you have a proposal, and that proposal tells you how much per hour they're going to charge. And normally we have a capital ordinance and a bond ordinance. Those are pretty straightforward. It's about the same amount every year. What you can't know in advance, at least with any kind of certainty, is how much additional work you're going to need them to do. So in 2023, we had a lot of NJIB funding. That funding had at least 15, 16 conference calls with the DEP. We have a disagreement with the DEP right now over requirements for funding, and that has not been resolved yet. So along with our engineer, our bond attorney is on a lot of those calls as well. So, and they bill us for that. NJIB financing is wonderful. That's the financing that they forgive 50% of it. And then the other half of it, they offer at a very low interest. But your professionals have to work a lot to get that for us. So our bond attorney is intricately involved in that whole process. So is our auditor. Because that hasn't been resolved. I've left that as a reflection of what we paid last year. It probably won't be that high because most of the issues have been resolved, but there's still a pretty big disagreement on one part of the financing. We also have that $800,000 STAG grant from the federal government that requires a lot of extra work as well. Any questions on anything else that's on here?
yeah, for OEM, personal, I'm guessing expenses and training? So do we anticipate, I guess, additional training this year to this will cost so much?
Wade actually has plans to include CERT, OEM, fire, and PD in a lot of his training
Yes.
sessions. So
Yes,
he's,
he talked about not cross-training, but utilizing it through that.
he actually has a lot of training scheduled for this year that we've been maybe lacking in the past. One note for insurance. In our group medical insurance last year, we had a pretty significant jump because the state health plan increased just the local contributions. They let the state employees negotiate a lower rate, but they hit the municipal and teachers to increase their premiums dramatically. There was not a large increase this year. It was pretty minimal for our state health plan. So that is why there's only a $50,000 increase. We've also increased that to account for the potential 2 new employees for buildings and grounds and a lot of changes in types of plans from other departments that may be anticipated.
If I could just interject a word of caution, something I've seen with another client. Everyone saw that jump in the state healthcare plan. What you're now seeing is a lot of municipalities with a very favorable claim history jumping out of the state plan and getting private plans. And they're seeing some savings on that. What you're getting though is all the, for lack of a better term, bad apples staying inside the state plan, which is going to drive costs up and potentially put that plan in somewhat of a death spiral. My own word of caution is keep an eye on that. It's not a budgetary concern this year, but it could definitely be. I don't know what your increase was last year. Was it 25% or somewhere in
It was 17.
17? So very high. That's not out of the realm of possibilities in the future. So my caution is to keep an eye on that going forward.
Thank you. Anything else for page 4 and 5?
That health benefit waivers for the people who waive their health insurance, right?
Correct. Those that are eligible that don't have the state health plan as their alternate plan. So it's just eligible employees that waive.
And the deductible payments, those stopped in 20.
Correct. We stopped that high deductible plan. So those ended in 2021.
Anything else on 4 and 5, Ryan? No? Okay, so 6, we have aid to volunteer fire companies, aid to the volunteer ambulance, LoSAP, prevention, fire prevention salaries, municipal prosecutor, which is actually 0, streets and road maintenance, sewer and water, streets and road maintenance is operating, waste collection, recycling, solid waste collecting, garbage, buildings and grounds other expenses, and vehicle maintenance. I would just draw your attention to the solid waste collection. If you can see that actually last year it was $1,519,500. It was actually $1,518,999.96 when we actually locked into the new rate that you all passed. I think it was the January 17th meeting. You can actually see that our solid waste collection actually went down. So it was it was definitely a much better number than we could have possibly thought for. So
a lot of towns went up
a
anywhere
lot of
from
towns went
100
up a
to
lot.
150%. So we were
We
very
were very,
fortunate.
very lucky to be able to do that. I just wanted to point that out because it could have been disastrous.
For fire prevention.
Mhm.
So the salaries and wages, we have 1 fire marshal, right?
We have 1 fire marshal and 1 deputy and a trainee. 3 part-time employees in that department.
Part-time. So that salary, that 48,700,
Mhm.
that's for all 3 employees.
Mhm.
And then the marshal is requesting $15 inspections minimum. That's what he's requesting. We charge
He
for
has,
them.
he has a bunch of requests that Greg will have to review in time, but part of the request is for re-inspection fees. That right now, I don't believe we're
There's
charging
no
a
fee.
re-inspection.
So if they come to your business and your smoke detectors don't work and your carbon monoxide detector doesn't work, you have 30 days to fix that. So the fire marshal then goes back out a second time, and when he gets there, you fixed your carbon monoxide detector, but you didn't fix your smoke detectors. So he'll either give you a written warning and he gives you another 30 days. He's got to go back a third time to make sure that you have everything that you're supposed to have. Now, that might be a little exaggerated going out 3 times, but he certainly has to go out for re-inspections if they come out. And sometimes it's just something simplistic as the fire extinguishers, they're not up to date, you know, they have to be renewed every year, you have to have your tags on it for the year that it is, and sometimes it's a couple of months past and you'll fail an inspection for that, but the fire marshal physically has to go back out again to do that, and that's what he's requesting. And I did ask Bernie to talk to other municipalities to see exactly what they do, because there's no reason why we should reinvent the wheel, but we also want to make sure that we're charging what the going rate is for all of these types of things to cover the expenses of the departments.
Do you remember what the initial rate is? I know it just went up.
There's
It's
three
15
different-
and 30.
Yeah, there's
15
a
and
couple
30.
of different kinds of
So,
inspections.
so if it's a regular fire inspection and it's within 30 days, it's $15 for the inspection. If it's within 30 days, it's $15 for the inspection. If the inspection was within 14 days, that's a $30 fee for getting it done within the 2 weeks.
Like rush it, like a rush.
Yes, and please let Bernie know that I had all this information and I really am listening when he talks.
So he wants to do a $15, in addition, a minimum of a $15
Re-inspection
reinspection.
fee,
I got you.
exactly.
Which would also, I mean, not like a ton of revenue, but would bring in a little bit of money.
But at least it covers the
Right.
covers the cost, because
Right,
he's gotta
right.
get in the car, he
Yeah.
has to drive
Uh-huh.
there, it's
Yeah,
it's
There's
a
paperwork for
person.
each time too.
Absolutely.
And it's his time, yeah, it's his time too.
Okay.
But we do know that almost everybody around us is charging re-inspection fees, that's the whole
They're
thing.
also probably charging more than $15 and $30.
Yes,
for
they
initial
are, but
inspection
that's another
fees.
conversation for another day.
Sorry.
The marshal does have a detailed
the gun.
plan, so I'm sure he'd like to talk to anyone about it, so if you want to step in.
A few minutes. I will.
Hopefully Bernie is not watching.
I'll talk to him.
I'm gonna text him to log off now.
Does anybody have any other questions about pages 6 and 7?
One real quick footnote for streets and roads, that it's on the top of
6.
7.
Thank
6
you.
and 7.
Their salt request has standardly been $150,000, and that's what we've been funding it.
Is
Um,
this, I'm sorry, can I interrupt? Is this an open meeting?
Yeah.
The public?
Yeah.
They're allowed to, it's a budget work session, so they're allowed to sit and hear.
Front door's locked.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, shit. Did anybody text us to tell us that the front doors are?
Yes.
They just texted Ryan.
Oh,
Oh, gosh.
duh. You're so smart. So dumb.
Well, in
About
our
me being
defense, who
dumb?
locked the door?
No.
Whoever locked it should really be unlocking it.
Well, then it was
Person isn't
Ryan.
here.
Ryan unlocked it. At 5 o'clock, it's his fault. How did all you guys get in?
I used my key.
Oh, okay, so it was locked, so it's your fault.
And
So
don't
you were here
forget-
before me. You
But
were here
wait.
Before me.
I came in over half hour early to familiarize myself.
Oh,
So it wasn't supposed to be unlocked yet.
I see.
Somebody brought pizza?
Oh,
Wow.
that's good, because I
That's
was
very
just
nice.
thinking I'm gonna do a DoorDash in about 5
I
minutes
have my cheese and.
before I fall down.
That is so sweet.
The land use candy bowl.
I ordered enough pizza for everybody.
You are so
thank
nice,
you.
Ryan, thank you.
Anchovies?
No.
Ah.
Did you order plain, Greg?
No.
3 planes.
I was gonna say, I'm glad you're sitting down.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Great to see
you.
you all.
Greg, I loved your piece yesterday.
Thank you so much. It's very nice.
Should we stick a rock in the door now?
Just
we
kidding.
need to-
Bye, guys.
It was
Bye,
comfortable.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Of course.
If you want to keep going, just to finish these 2 pages,
Okay.
or however you want to go.
All right, it's just the salt
I'm gonna
comment.
unlock.
Oh, the salt, you said.
Yeah, the salt.
Yeah,
150,000.
we did reduce that by
Yeah.
50,000. The resolution that was passed earlier this year in January, I think, was to transfer some of the money left over in salaries and wages into the snow trust. So we had sufficient funding from that left over, so we took that and we could reduce this year's budget. So trying to utilize that trust as much as we can.
Hopefully we have no snow next year.
Well, haven't you heard? Climate change, we never get snow again.
Remember, I see the salt now, I think it's pretty litter because of what you
You have that
said.
tour?
giant finger
You gotta
box.
take that tour. think those are the only kind of highlights that we have. Vehicle maintenance, we're always a little tight on, but the DPW last year got that tire mounting machine, which is great. The police change their tires twice a year and they have been storing them at Lakeside Tire and Auto. Now our DPW is able to do that, so it saves $25 per tire for every single police car twice a year. So
Good.
Pat's working hard over there trying to save us money and create revenue streams all on his own over there. No other questions on those pages? Pages 8 and 9, I'll go along with what the mayor was doing, has our public health services, our environmental health services, animal control, senior citizens programs, recreation programs, the blank department of parks and salaries that was moved into building and grounds a couple of years ago, our celebration of public events, our public utilities, contingency and statutory. And see if we have any big changes, but we are still waiting on some detail from about our recreation programs and senior programs. We're looking to get a list of their activities with a budget associated with them, so there may be some changes within these particular departments, but I'm sure it'll end up being a wash, just moving from one department to another.
So the public health services, that's the community center, right?
Part of it is, yeah.
Oh, what's the other? Okay, I see resource center. Okay, so what's
Yeah.
public health services? That part of
The
beginning.
contract services. Let me tell you what the spend on that.
Yeah, like what is it? That's what I mean.
I'll tell you. Spent from that line item. We have things like, deer carcass removal.
For public health services, that doesn't
Uh-huh.
fall under the animal control?
No, no, it's a public health issue for sure. Animal control has nothing to do with that,
Once it
so
dies, it's no longer under control.
I thought that.
Dead
we
animal
removed
control.
The animals off, okay.
no, deer carcass is something special. They,
Space
that's from
Farms.
Space Farms. Yeah, they come and take them and feed them to their lions, tigers, and bears online. Also, the expenses for the foot clinic for the seniors comes out of here.
Yeah.
Got it?
And that actually, that looks like the only things that come out of there. Mayor, we had a question on public health services, what was paid out of the contractual line item. It's budgeted at 6,000, we spent 5,700 last year. And research has shown that it is all foot clinic and deer carcass removal.
And then the resource center ones that's the wellness center.
So
Yes.
you're on
Okay.
page
Just like-
8.
Page
yeah.
8, yep, just
And
at
then-
the top of 8.
What's environmental health services?
That is our environmental commission, any expenses that they would have, and the large chunk is the beautification, which I think was like a subset of
Yes.
environmental
Yes.
commission. I don't know if I'm calling that the wrong term or not, but. And that was all the beautiful decorations and the plantings around the building and the parks and things like that. And if we hire 2 buildings and grounds employees, they'll be able to help out with maintain.
Do we have, okay, so, sorry, back to the page here.
What page?
I was backtracking, I was trying to look for other pages. So we have separate internet charges at the wellness center.
Correct.
We are, again, Greg and I have a meeting on Wednesday with a representative from Optimum for the cable franchise meeting. So every 10 years you do the cable franchise. Unfortunately, Optimum is the only one that actually, like Bradley was saying the other night, Optimum is the only one that comes in for the cable franchise, so that's what we have.
Oh, no, I get that. So like the 5,500 for internet, that's just internet. That's not like a triple play where it's like TV, phone, internet. It's just internet, correct?
Yes, but
Okay.
what I was gonna explain is that hasn't been negotiated, that contract hasn't been negotiated in 10 years. So there's a very strong possibility that we might be able to negotiate something like that into there. So next year, maybe we won't have that because we are aware of certain buildings that are paying for internet and whatnot. And sometimes other towns have gotten that as a perk as part of the franchise fee. So hopefully those aren't there next year.
We do have, if we're just gonna discuss internet, I mean, utilities are on this page as well too, but that is about $450 a month just for that high-speed internet at that one location. We have a couple of pump houses and things like that that have another internet connection as a backup for an alarm, and those are $114 a month. So anything that that can be negotiated with Optimum could be really beneficial. I did just send our all of our Optimum bills to our IT provider to make sure that we are not carrying any extra, because we just switched to public fiber and private fiber last year. And they only came up with 3 bills that we can definitely cancel and 3 that we maybe be able to, but the bulk of them we still have to maintain because they're satellite locations and we can't get fiber to them. It'd be really nice if we could, but
So
We're still-
Optimum still corners the market, back on.
Absolutely.
my next project will be to see if, especially for our pump houses, if there's a lesser expensive option. Because right now I think we have like a phone. I don't know if it's a cell phone or it's not a copper line, because we're just replacing copper lines with the electronic version of those.
Mhm.
But we have 2. We have internet and then we have a phone line there. So do we need both? I know we need a backup, but is there like a cellular that could be a backup instead of the internet? Like there's got to be something that we can do, because it's costing us, say, $40 a month for the phone and then $114 for the internet there. And it's a lot of money.
Well, again, that might be something else, just reaching out to somebody like Mount Arlington, who just got sewers a few years before we did, what they do with theirs, how they do theirs.
For their alarms.
Again, just because we don't need to reinvent the wheel, we can just see what everybody else is doing first. Instead of, having somebody else check for us, we can kind of check ourselves and see how that goes. Are we done with 8 and 9? So 10 is grants, interlocal services, municipal court salaries, which is 0 because we don't have that. Municipal court other expenses, public defender, 0, capital improvement fund, debt, emergency 5-year, reserve for uncollected taxes. How about starting with the bottom? How about reserve for uncollected taxes? Explaining maybe what that is.
That is the amount that we charge our residents over and above what we actually need. It's like an allowance for doubtful accounts that a commercial business would have. So I mentioned before that we have to pay the county and the school 100% of their levy, and all the people that don't pay their taxes on time, we have to raise $1.7 million more than what we actually need to make sure that that funding is in hand. And just so you have an idea as to how much that is. That's about between 6 and 7 cents on your taxes that we have to raise over and above what we actually need, just to account for people that pay their taxes late or don't pay at all.
And just keep in mind that the borough always gets their money. So we always get our taxes, whether they're sold at tax sale or whether you pay them on time or you pay them late, but the borough always gets their money. Even if something is in a foreclosure, the borough still gets their taxes. We'll get them eventually, but that's why having this reserve for uncollected taxes is so important, because we will get it, but it might not be for 60 days or 90 days, and we still have our obligations that we have to pay.
And this reevaluation, that 130,000 that you put into the reevaluation, is that for when we have the 10 years, how long is it, 20 years, whatever it is?
No, that's, the state allows you to specially raise a couple of things, your codification, a revaluation, and something with your tax maps. Those are considered special emergencies, so the state gives you a special opportunity to raise that over 5 years. So our revaluation costs $650,000. That's what the ordinance was for. So we, over 5 years, we have to raise that $130,000 until it's fully paid back. So we're kind of borrowing from ourselves, which is another reason to have an ample fund balance available. So this is the second year that we're paying it. We have 3 more years, and then that appropriation will go away.
Under the municipal court salary and wages, I know the court is physically no longer here, but aren't we paying a portion?
Yep, that's under the interlocal
Interlocal.
services, just
Oh,
above
got
that.
Got it, okay.
We have 175,000 in there for this year. And the grants portion at the top of page 10, those are equally offset by the revenues in the beginning of the budget.
And I'm sorry, just for clarification, the grant amounts that are there are grants we've already been awarded, so like we know that we have those.
For the most part, yeah. Yeah, we either have the physical cash that we received last year, or we've received notification that it's definitely
on its
coming
way.
in.
Okay.
And once we get that letter, the state will allow us to put it in the budget, or if we physically receive the cash already, we can put it in the budget. So those will all be equally offset by revenue, so there won't be a net change.
Any more questions on 10 or 11? Like to take a small recess? And then break? Okay, so we're going to adjourn for 5 minutes. Motion, second.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Alright,
Aye.
turn off or stay on.
No, wait till they turn around.
That's one, that's all good.
Okay, so we're back after our 10-minute recess. And we are on the,
Just make a motion to come back.
making a motion to come back.
Make a motion to come back.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
What document would you like to do next? Lauren?
Can I ask a question on page 11 of that initial document?
Absolutely.
So that $1.7 million,
Oh,
the reserve,
reserve. Okay.
what is that 1.7 based on? Just so I'm clear.
It's, I can show you the formula. It's a pretty big calculation. It is what we think the county taxes are gonna be, what the school taxes are gonna be, what our levy is. It takes into account our local revenue. It used to be on sheet 25 of the AFS. It takes into account your percentage of collection from the year before. And you pretty much divide what you need to collect by your percentage of collection, and then that's the maximum or the minimum that you would want to have for your rent.
So, say that again, you divide the what by the what? By the percentage of collection.
Yeah.
You divide
The amount of your levy.
and what is our percentage of collection usually? Like last year, what was our percentage of collection?
It was above 98, but I don't know offhand what it actually was.
And what about,
Do you want me to send you sheet 25? Because then you can see the whole calculation.
We don't have it here, but she can send it to you.
that'd be good.
Can we do that? Okay. Make myself a note.
That was all. Thank you.
We're going to the second.
You never got called short of it. Just the,
Right.
you've always been ahead of the game.
One of the
That's good.
things that does is one of the journal entries after you actually adopt your budget, that kind of comes off the top. So you have an amount that you have to raise through taxation, which is that whatever our levy is, the 13 million. Yeah, that comes right off of that, so that we have to raise that much less. So it's a non-spending budget appropriation. So we can't spend it, but we get to kind of subtract it from the amount that needs to be raised. So the second set of paperwork is the detail on salaries and wages. And I don't think that you all want to discuss that tonight, but that's definitely something that you can go through and see which employees are paid out of which departments. You can see their history. If an employee was replaced, you can see what the former employee was paid for that position. If you want to go through it, we definitely can, but you have to be
We just have to
careful.
be very careful because we cannot speak about an employee that is not here.
You can talk about a
I have a
position.
general question, not
Okay.
employee specific. Is there a list, like I see some line items show, I'm guessing these are stipends? Like, is there a list of the stipends that we pay out in each department depending on what they do, so we know how that affects?
I don't have a list of stipends. I could create one.
Okay.
Would you like something like that?
But I think it would be helpful so we know who gets paid extra for doing what tasks. Cause at that point, it almost, I don't know, is that a requirement that we have to pay out stipends, or can people's roles assume those responsibilities? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends if it's,
How it was
It's
offered is what
logical.
I would think.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
What, what'd you say?
I said, I would think it would probably depend on how something is offered, because someone can offer a $5,000 stipend for doing some kind of an activity as opposed to increasing it into their salary, because it might put them, close to the top of the range of the salary, and you don't want to do that. You would want to have, as the employee, you would want to have the stipend and still be able, entitled to your raises, be able to cap, at the top of your salary. So stipends are also not included in those positions. So for instance, if someone was doing the the website, let's just say, and they were getting a stipend for that, but that person took another opportunity somewhere else to work, and someone new came in that position, that doesn't mean that they would get the stipend for doing the website just because the previous person did. Those don't travel. They don't stay with the actual position. They could travel from person to person who's doing that specific job. And the other thing that I do want to mention about these sheets are part of a draft budget. They are absolutely positively confidential. So everybody knows. And I think most of these were very straightforward of the division and the departments for people to see exactly what everything is. Keep in mind, we have 3 unions here in Opakon. We have our PBA, we have our white collar, we have our blue collar. We've established as department heads usually follow the white collar. And I think that's about it, right, Greg? When it comes to salaries, that's pretty basic information. The rest is just arithmetic.
Susan, the draft part, there's no, so you have 23 requests, 23 actual. The draft is, there's no request in there. It's just all of it on in one shot.
The salaries are non-negotiable. You're fixed. The salaries in the budget are really the only items that are really fixed. Because they're already including those types of increases, the 2%, the increases from unions and things like that is already in there.
Right, so all the unions have their increases in there. The non-represented, such as your department heads or management and your dispatchers, your fire, safety, those employees are considered non-represented, but they are estimated in there by the historical practice of providing what the white collar increases. So those are in there at the same increase that white collar has.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so we can't look at a department and say, well, you know, we really don't want to pay these people that, we're gonna cut that. You can't do that because these are already negotiated in there.
Right. I understand that, but you have requested increases here. Those are not, those are requested.
Right.
Right.
I just
No,
wanna,
those are what they are. But
that's
the,
what I was.
yes, yes. Over and above that, you can't remove them.
One of the things that our interim administrator has requested is that any salary and wage that's in excess of what would traditionally be provided, say anything over 2% for a department head or any position that's going to change, he has asked for a listing of that. So I'll get that to him this week so he knows and he can make his decisions based on that to provide to all of you.
So if the salary is going up, yeah, not being a specific person, but the salary is going up pretty substantially. I mean, should we anticipate that's a part-time move to a full-time move?
No. No, I mean, we can talk about the departments if you want to talk in general, which department?
Streets and road maintenance.
What page?
Three.
So the majority of employees in there are all represented. You have a superintendent and a supervisor that are not represented, they're in management. All the other employees listed there's one employee from white collar, everyone else is in the blue collar union. The exception being the recycling center has a, well, they used to have a part-time employee, but now DPW covers that. There are seasonal help listed on the bottom portion, 3 seasonal help for $8,200. Those are offset partially at least by the clean communities. Which I will see.
And you'll also see in the buildings and grounds, parks, salaries and wages, you'll see that's where the 2 new hires that are requested from DPW are in that line.
That looks like there's only one there.
I see one, yeah.
There's 2 new hires on
Buildings,
buildings and
line
grounds.
110,
Yeah, it says 2 new hires, but it's only one salary.
No, that's 2.
that's 2.
That's two salaries?
Yep, they
Then
started
it's-
at $19 an hour for the blue collar contract,
Then why was it 140?
because that was two, plus they're fully loaded, which means that that covers their
Health
benefits, pension, insurance, taxes.
In general questions, about
Yeah,
salaries?
Lorraine, on the, going back to the streets and road maintenance and all that, in 22, we didn't have any temporary help, did we?
No, they ended
Couldn't
up not
find
hiring
anybody.
them.
Which one?
Temporary help during 2022, we had budgeted 23,000, of which we didn't use. I recall we couldn't get any.
Yeah, no
Something
one,
like that.
yeah, they advertised a little later than normal,
Yeah,
and we couldn't get anybody. I did just notice that I have a mathematical mistake in that I added 15,000 for clean communities instead of subtracting their funding portion, so we have another $15,000 in our budget,
So that should be a negative in front of that 15?
so we can add that right into.
I have
capital.
never made a mistake in the negative direction. Congratulations. It's always going the wrong way, so thank you.
Can I just ask what a certain phrase means? If you
Sure.
could just break it down for me?
Sure.
What is a Pittman time buyout?
Oh,
23, the actual was over $1 million?
yeah, so,
Everyone's laughing. Is that a bad question?
No,
No,
no.
it's just
No,
a
not at
beautiful
all.
question. It's a great question.
no,
Brad and I
Okay.
talked about this for about 6 hours.
What's a Pittman time buyout?
Pittman schedule for the police department.
they'll work a 10 or a 12-hour shift,
Yeah,
and it has to do with the allocation of, it's like a pay differential.
So with the Pittman schedule, they're allowed to work 40 hours. So if they choose to work 10 hours, 4 days in a row and have 3 days off, that's considered a Pittman schedule. They could work 2 days for 10 hours, take 2 days off in between, then come back 2 more days later in a week. Whereas normally your week is like a 5-day work week in a row, and you have 8 hours a day or 9 hours a day. Pittman allows them, it's just called the Pittman schedule. And it was at one point in time, part of the contract negotiation where they negotiated in the Pittman schedule for the police department.
So like if you can work, this is a vague example, you could work Monday, Tuesday, be off Wednesday, Thursday, then on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then it's like opposite days. You could just.
You have no
it's a
set
rotation.
schedule.
You
$1
want
million,
23
yeah,
For that.
yeah.
Oh.
If I could just get some clarification. Because isn't that over and above what's already in salaries
Yeah,
and,
so I didn't go back in 2023 and look at everybody's W-2 to see what they were actually paid. So all of them were paid that $1,082,000. That wasn't Pittman. That was just kind of like a holding line.
And then if the Pittman schedules for the police, why is it coming out of streets and roads?
Yeah, it's not.
It's not.
That $1,082,000 is the total amount of salaries and wages paid out of DPW. But I just didn't break it out by employee. So I can go back and pull their W-2s and record in what they were all actually paid individually. I just didn't have the time to do that.
oh, okay,
So
thank
that's
you.
really, it's just like a holding line to just shove a total in there that we paid out for the year.
Oh, okay, so this is a placeholder,
Yeah, I'll go.
but
back
it goes under,
I'll allocate per person so that you can see it then.
okay, thanks, Lorraine.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Salaries and wages anyway? Never tell.
Last page of that, page 5 of 5, that is the breakout between water and sewer for the 5 employees that we have there full-time. Public Works, but dedicated to water and sewer. We also have budget worksheet pages for water and sewer utilities. For some reason, I did not include them in your packet, so I'll be happy to leave them for all of you. Their budgets are balanced, their capital is fully funded, and they have adequate fund balance and revenues to completely balance their budgets. But for some reason, I just did not make copies of it. And I'll definitely provide them to you. I'll leave them in your mailboxes. And then at our next work session on March 6th, feel free to ask any questions that you have for those budgets. Here's my presentation for this evening.
Very good, Maria.
Yes, thank you, Lorraine.
As you go through all these, lots of information, all these documents, please feel free to send me emails. I believe that I can push information out to all of you at once. You just can't respond. But if someone asks me a question, I will answer it and copy also that everybody has the information. Just please don't respond to that so that we don't violate open public meeting.
Can I just, who has offload truck information that Pat gave me?
It was very powerful.
I know. I know. I can make copies for everybody. Just so you have it, so we can understand exactly what he's asking. So that is the presentation of where we are and what's happening. We did not anticipate anybody having any conclusions or this was really just an informational so that everybody could see the budget, get an idea of what was going on so that we could discuss moving forward, like Greg was saying, possible cuts in capital and
Oh, wait, we got a couple. Hold on.
Oh, there should be two.
Just to,
Oh, there's two.
Yep.
Look at us.
But
We're
wait,
on the
there's
same
more.
page today. We can't find any.
We got this somewhere.
thanks.
Here,
So we don't need
right here.
finders tonight then.
it's in the binder.
It's in the binder.
I think it's new.
It's just different.
Let's see.
And
Yes,
they were-
it's different.
these were,
Okay,
So this,
these were
24
blank.
was updated.
replaces this.
24 was updated. That's what it is.
Yep.
Column.
Yep, so 2024 is now added in there, so you can see. I just want to really caution you that, that these are our best estimates. So we have no idea what the county and school are really going to go up to, but I used a mathematical formula anticipating that they would go up about the same amount that, that we went up percentage-wise. So that could possibly be what the tax rate would be for 2024. The second page of that is just a look at our local tax. So you may have people come up to you and say, hey, with this proposed budget that you guys are working on, my house is worth $500,000. What would my local tax be? And you can look at this handy dandy chart and you could say $500,000, it would be $2,760. That's what we're estimating your local tax would be.
God.
So you can compare it to, it's hard to do in a revaluation, but I did 2023 prior to reval, 2023 after the reval, and then proposed for 2024. And what you want to compare is the 2024 proposed to the 2023 after reval, the side-by-side column, so you can see what someone's increase for that value of home would be.
And again, I would just caution everyone, this is a draft document. This is not an exact number, so don't give anybody this number till we actually know
No.
these are the numbers.
My question is that for this historical tax rate, right?
Mhm.
We have from 2011 to 2024.
Mhm.
So what is that 0.552, 0.552? Do I understand what that is compared to the
That's-
0.941?
Well, the 0.94 was our tax rate in 2023 for local. And 2024, if this draft budget were adopted exactly as is, we would be close to or at 0.552 for the tax rate for 2024.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah, I mean, it's a small increase. It's a cent-and-a-half increase. It doesn't look like there's an increase because we had the revaluation. So it doubles the property value when you look historically. That's why I have that little asterisk that says revaluation.
I see.
Yeah. And Another thing, the only other part of our binder that we're actually gonna discuss is section 2. That's our highest appropriation. I won't go through every single appropriation, but there is backup in there for almost all of the appropriations. If you cut to the back, which is page 2, really, you can see that our kind of predetermined expenses are 83% of our budget. So we're really working with 17% of our budget. The rest of it is either predetermined by labor contracts, or the state says you have to pay this fee, or insurance says you have to pay this fee. A lot of these are predetermined. Moving forward, you have the opportunity to change them when you renegotiate labor contracts in a couple of years, or if you want to go out on the open market or another market for medical benefits, or if you want to shake up your JIF and look somewhere else for professional liability insurances. I think I mentioned before, if our workers' comp is high, we could have more required training and have less accidents for employees. So there's ways that you could modify or somehow impact these expenses, the 83% of the budget, but you don't have a lot of wiggle room. You don't have a lot of opportunity to make changes on 83% of your budget. And I was shocked when I got that figure, because I had never done this calculation. And I went into Marie and told her, and she wasn't surprised.
She was very excited. She's like, guess what?
Yeah, I think I ran in papers in hand. You won't believe this. She was like, okay. Okay.
Actually, I think he used the word amazing. Isn't this amazing? I just couldn't find the same excitement that she had.
You tried. I know you were trying.
I did. I was trying very, very hard. But now it makes complete sense to me. I understand why you're so excited. So yes, I understand the excitement.
So for our next meeting, are we going through additional documents, or do we have to come back with our suggested $200,000 cuts?
You can come back with them. You can email me ahead of time.
Okay.
I'll put everything together, and I can always recirculate information, or I can leave, if you don't want an email, I can leave information in the box. You can't decide on anything until you have a public meeting, but you can definitely offer up suggestions. In that case, if everybody has suggestions, I can get, version 1 through 10 created and tell you what those options are and how much they would actually save, and we can do it that way.
And let me ask this question. Would you like to have the department heads of the budgets that are seeing the increase in capital? The Pat Mason from DPW, we could have the chief in from police for capital, or would you rather just have individual conversations before then? Otherwise, they would have come to the meeting tonight. Unfortunately, the chief was actually ill, and when she called me, I didn't even know who it was. But she would have been here this evening, and again, Pat Mason would have been here, and it'll be on a Wednesday, so I'm sure if we want Pat to come, he'll come and he can explain some of these things, maybe in more detail, if you want. Otherwise, you can just talk to him separately. It's up to you. But I just want to give them the heads up that we're gonna want them to come if that's the case.
I mean, I'm okay with reaching out to them directly. If we don't have to pull them away from anything. I mean,
It's up
whatever
to you
you
Yeah.
guys.
Is that
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, we have all their contact info.
Okay.
and- Yeah.
That's fine.
Oh, I didn't realize I was still saving up.
Any other questions?
You're just so excited about the numbers.
That was like so aggressive right in your face.
No more
Sorry.
questions? Motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lorraine?